We thank you for calling us together. Brothers and sisters in Christ in this community of faith we call Peace Lutheran, thank you for your faithfulness to us, the many years that this congregation has done ministry, your faithfulness to us this past year especially, in emboldening our hearts and giving us the strength and the courage to do ministry in difficult conditions. Thank you for your faithfulness in giving us an eye and a vision to where you may be calling us to serve. Bless our time together tonight as we share some dreams. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, first of all, thank you for those of you who are in person here tonight. I know there's a number of others who are joining us online. It is always easier to talk to real-life people in a room. Those first few months when we were not having in-person worship, you just don't know how hard it is to preach to a camera. That is not easy to do. And though this past year had changed so many of the ways that we do ministry, what it didn't change was our desire and our ability to look forward and how to best do ministry into the future. And even as the congregation as a whole, we had to adapt how to do so much of our ministry remotely. All during that time, the church council continued to keep us as a staff focused on the road ahead. In a sense, they kept us dreaming of what could be possible. So ran across this quote from Pope Francis about dreaming. He says this about dreaming together. He wrote, "By ourselves, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together." So, with that in mind, I want to share with you tonight what I'm going to just call the beginning of a dream that won't be complete until we get a chance to dream it together. The dream I'm talking about began in the summer of 2018, so 2.5 years ago, and it was the church council who told us to pull together a task force that could start looking at how we use space in this building. And they wanted this task force to answer 3 questions. Let's see if I can. How is the building currently being used? What are the current space issues due to either insufficient or poorly organized space? And what kind of space do we anticipate going to need in the next 15 years? So, seeing that challenge ahead, pulled together a multi-generational committee of some really wonderful people. I'm not going to go through all their names, but that list of people met diligently, oftentimes twice a month, for these 2-hour meetings, because what they were doing as they were gathering information, they were interviewing each of our ministry directors, asking them those same 3 questions. Well, how are you using this building currently? What are the space issues you're encountering? And what do you anticipate kind of spaces you're going to need? And meeting after meeting, they listened to hours of the staff, the ministry directors, describing how they use this building. And then they surveyed the worshiping community here, as well as the parents of all of our child programs, everything from preschool and daycare to confirmation and Sunday school parents, people who use this building in other places except here in the sanctuary, to get what they were thinking about. And then they did a little city tour of churches that had recently built here in Sioux Falls, kind of seeing what they were, what they did, why they chose to build what they did, and how was that space working out for them. So after a year of doing all this work, here are some recommendations they made. Regarding our worship and fellowship ministry, they said, well, we realized that we could improve the experience of worshipers that come weekly by improving how they get to the sanctuary. Now, if you come from this end of the church, it's pretty easy. The sanctuary is there. But if you find your way either through the south or west doors, you maybe are not real sure which direction the sanctuary is at. Secondly, as I don't have to tell you, the gathering space is not working as a gathering space. There's just too many people, and there's never a feeling like you can linger and have those conversations because there's another group always waiting. The fellowship hall, though wonderful, was acoustically challenging. Maybe not as a fellowship hall. It was very loud in there, but we were using it to teach, and the acoustics there were something formidable to deal with. And the last thing, if funding permitted, to expand the number of rehearsal spaces here, because we are blessed with a lot of excellent music ministry, but there's a lot of groups that have been formed for music ministry, but finding a time for them to rehearse in the schedule has been a little bit challenging. So in the other areas, faith formation, otherwise called Christian Ed, they really needed at least 2 large spaces to teach. We have, in some of our confirmation grade levels, of like 80 kids. And it got to be to where we could not actually fit all the kids into the spaces we had on Wednesday nights. So your pastors are teaching confirmation on Sunday mornings. Some of us are in here doing worship. Some of us are teaching confirmation in other parts of the building because we just ran out of room. Other things to do would be a multi-use area / gym. Another space that would take a lot of that recreational activity out of the fellowship hall. A space that could be used not only by children's ministries for Sunday school, but for the youth program, for peace care, for preschool, and basically giving us another place for those kinds of activities, not the fellowship hall. And let's see, is there a third thing? We will find out. Oh yeah, just additional rooms that could be not only for Sunday school, but places for small groups. If you've noticed, we have greatly expanded, added to the number of small groups that meet for different reasons around here, and to have places for them to meet, even conversational areas, not even a full-fledged 4-walled room would be a wonderful place for some of these groups to meet. Knowing that every room that we added, one thing that's kind of nice is that right now every classroom we have in the building is shared between children's ministry and between our daycare and preschool, which means every room in this building goes through 2 transitions every week. There's a tear down and set up for Wednesday night, Wednesday school. There's a tear down and set up for Sunday school. And it happens twice a week, every week. And we've learned to do that, and we will continue to do that. But if there were if a way to build enough rooms to where they didn't have to share spaces, that would just be a wonderful benefit to have. Our outreach ministry, and I just mentioned our preschool and peace care rooms, again, to giving them their own dedicated rooms, that would be wonderful. By the way, we have so much good reputation in the city of Sioux Falls because of our preschool and our peace care programs. Our programs are top rated, and there are people who get drawn to our congregation because of having their kids here in these programs. They're very vital parts of our overall ministry outreach. They too wouldn't mind having a gym rather than the fellowship hall to do some of their activities. Right now, the daycare nursery is our church nursery here, which works just fine, but it's separated from all the other daycare rooms. Those teachers are not connected with the other teachers. So if we're turning things around, it'd be nice to get the daycare nursery along with the other daycare rooms, and another place to kind of prepare food for their lunches so they wouldn't have to share the kitchen all the time. On top of that, knowing that our church has a lot of community groups, not only the Scouts, but a lot of 12-step ministries meet here, and we always have to kind of figure out how they get in, what parts they use, and just a way that how we design the building, that there would be a part of the church that would be kind of dedicated or for outside groups. So we took all these space needs together, and this team filed a report. At the end, they had 1 year, so it was in 2019, the summer of 2019, that they put together their results, their findings, and we turned right around and took all that information and formed a design team. And on that design team, we pulled together some, forgot administration, 4 offices, okay. On the design team, we had another group of people who met. They were asked to, first of all, select an architectural firm to work with, and then with that architectural firm, start to envision a building that could address some of these space needs, just to know what we were looking at. Well, after interviewing several firms, the team unanimously selected TSP right here in Sioux Falls. Interestingly enough, they were the architectural firm that designed this sanctuary here back in that was built in '98, and we have some member connections there. In fact, the lead person on the architectural team that we were working with is our own Tim Jensen, a lifetime member here at Peace, and happy to be in attendance here to make sure that I get this right. No, that's not why you're here, but I know you're here to, when I misspeak, you can help me out here a little bit, Tim. So it was very fun to involve a family member of the congregation who was highly invested in how this project turns out, because it was his church. So they met and worked through different design features over the course of the next few months, and they came up with a master plan, a plan that would address all these space issues that were brought up. I will just tell you that the design team was very, very pleased with that master plan that came out of it, and that's really what I wanted to show you here tonight. Not because it's a finished project, but because it starts to get us to think of what's possible, and maybe start to build some of our own dreams. So as I go through these elements of the master plan, I don't want you just to, the drawings are going to be cool and the floor plan's informative, but I want you to think also of the ministry that those spaces are going to make possible, because that's the exciting part. Bricks and mortar, that's kind of fun to build with, but it's the ministry that happens inside. That's where the real value of having these kinds of dreams is all about. So as I mentioned, one of the first things on our checklist was that a way into the building, a way into the sanctuary that could draw people not only from the east, but also from the west. And the architects delivered. I have a few exteriors for you to look at. This first one is from the east entrance, for the east entrance. What you can see, of course, the sanctuary is in the background, but obviously one of the most striking things there is that big glass entryway structure. That's the vestibule, new construction that would kind of go out there, really mark this as a main entrance into the church. And you will probably also notice there a canopy covering a driveway so that you could drop off people in inclement weather and they could safely get into the church. So that's kind of a nice feature, a canopy with the drop-off and a very nice vestibule on that side. And on the west side of the congregation, our entrance right now is a little bit hidden and tucked away. Not so much now. That's the west side, and there's a lot going on in that picture. But if you look at not the glass, the big glass area on the left, but the kind of glass area in the middle of that structure, that would be the west entrance. And yes, it is 2 stories tall. Very striking. There's reason that it's 2 stories tall, but we're going to come back to that a little bit later. So let's talk then about getting people into this gathering space. And let's take a look at what the architects did for a view inside the gathering space to enlarge it. Several things to point out on this. They enlarged our gathering space in 2 different directions. First, on the left side, you see those brown columns. those columns actually mark where the current wall of the Shalom room is. So they went and cut into the Shalom room in that part of the building and extended and gave us some extra space that way, which really kind of functions. I can't tell if you can see in the drawing, but they envision, little conversational areas inside that colonnade where you could actually, if you wanted to sit and have a chat with somebody on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night, you could do so and be out of the main flow of traffic. It just invites to linger and have some conversations. The other way they expanded the gathering space is by pushing it further west. At the back, it's there's a kind of a brown wall. It says gathering place on it. That signifies or designates where our current gathering wall is, okay? Now, what they did is that they blew out the rooms behind it. This opens up into a very large area that is will have tables and chairs set up all the time, and a place to go and actually sit down between services, during services, have a cup of coffee, and feel free to linger as long as you want to linger there. And we gained that space by taking away the music room, music office, and 3 or 4 classrooms. For those of you who are long time members here, what we basically did was open up the original 1965 church building, complete with laminated beams across the top, which are kind of depicted there as well, and made that, in a sense, this expanded gathering place. I think I can show you better now that you have an idea what we're looking at by looking at a floor plan. Oop, hang on. I hit too many buttons. By looking at this floor plan. So obviously in the upper right, that blue area is our sanctuary, and below that is our current gathering space, but we pushed it down further to the south, and the area that I'm talking about looks like it has little white flowers in it. Those flowers are actually depictions of tables and chairs. So that's how we're going to mark that room, where there's going to be tables and chairs set up most of the time. And in fact, the square footage of that room is equivalent to the square footage we're using in the fellowship hall now to set up funeral lunches. I mean, we can set up a whole lot more tables in there than what's depicted in that drawing. But this typically would be a place where we maybe would set up most funeral lunches that weren't too big, which is why on the far left of that blue of the expanded gathering space is a slightly relocated and completely redesigned kitchen from the ground up, so that it can serve through its windows this new gathering place with all these tables. So that, again, for the typical size funerals, as well as for Sunday morning, Wednesday evening coffees, that kitchen is right there to help service that area. Not too bad. In essence, in some ways, they basically took the fellowship hall and moved it on the other side of the kitchen so that it could function as an extended gathering space for us to make use of. So when you take a look at all that, the present gathering space now expanded to the south, and this new gathering space, we more than doubled the capacity of our gathering space, and we got very excited about that. Last thing is a point on this, the Shalom room that got half eaten up, or a third eaten up by the expansion, the other 2/3 get converted to a brand new and spacious women's bathroom, leaving us a chance to expand the men's bathroom by taking over where the women's bathroom was as well. So a larger capacity for bathrooms that go with that space. And by pushing to the south, we straightened out the hallway to the west corridor. It's a straight shot now, and I think I let you come back to this main image. You can kind of shoot right down there and look at the west doors. It's pretty clear that this is the main east-west passage through the church. So having a space to relax and visit when the building's at its busiest on Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings, I think that's going to be a game changer for our ministry. And that space during the rest of the week will also be a space that will allow smaller groups and other groups to use that and congregate in those areas as well. Okay, that's a pretty major piece of what we're doing. Of course, we remove some spaces, and these are spaces that are very important to us, and we have to somehow find new places for those spaces, like the music ministry. We do need rehearsal space, and so I'm going to zero in on that now. As I said, we are blessed to have a very vibrant music ministry, lots of groups, trying to find times to rehearse not only during the week, but to warm up before worship. So what the architects envisioned for us was a music wing, I guess you could call it, a new addition. And what we're looking at is the blue rooms up above that new gathering space with the tables and chairs. And so there are two large rooms that are the new rehearsal areas, not one, but the two rehearsal areas, so that we can get two groups going at the same time. And there's a scattering of storage and music offices, as well as a studio to do some of our recording for the live stream, actually also to live stream in person with our worshiping audience before and after a worship service. Can't do that in here because there's too much movement, but in a studio we can actually connect with our online worshipers in a more direct and personal way. There is one little green room up there that if your eyesight's very good, it says quilting, but I'm going to get to that a little bit later, okay? That comes in a little bit later, okay. This space would be new construction, and so it will change a little bit how we look along 41st Street, but not much. I have an elevation that shows this. There's our sanctuary on the left side, and that part to the right that is the lighter brick and the darker brick, that is our music wing addition. Actually, just that lighter brick, I think. And so it's not too tall, doesn't take anything away from the sanctuary, and looks pretty nice. It's very good about not drawing attention to itself. But we also took away the Shalom Room, which is our adult faith formation ministry. A lot of that happens in there, as well as some classrooms. And we had to find places for that. So the answer to that would be to be able to do that by adding a two-story Christian education, faith formation area. And that's what you were seeing here when I showed you this west side view, that the entrance there is on the far right side, but the addition that we're talking about is that what's taking up most of the picture there, with a nice little architectural feature of some glass walls for both the upper and the lower level that would let a lot of light in. So that goes over there on the west side of the building, and how that looks like, and well, some of you who are very observant are going to say, wait a minute, where's our current fellowship hall? I don't see that in there. Well, we had to contend with setbacks, and a setback not only to the north, which you would have guessed along 41st Street, but there's only so far we can build to the west, because that street that we vacated and turned into a parking lot, we can't build over the top of that. So we can only build up to where that street once ran, but no further. So here we had this chunk of real estate that our fellowship hall was sitting on, and kind of with the idea that we could do so much more. That was just the right place for Christian ministry, Christian education ministry to happen, but the building was no way going to be usable or big enough to handle what we had in mind. So this concept takes away the fellowship hall and adds in its place this two-story Christian education building. So I'm going to show you the floor plans that go along with that. First, on the first floor, you'll notice this huge green area, this rectangle on the left. which dominates the lower level of this addition. That room, I don't know if you can tell, but there's some faint lines that have drawn that into quarters, and that's been envisioned as movable walls, so that we can either have 4 large rooms, all big enough to handle 80 kids of confirmation, in a very acoustically friendly space, or if we need to host a large funeral or something in there where, you know, we're serving more than 200 people, all the walls can come back and we can get one large area for a massive event. Around the rooms to the north, a lot of classrooms. And to the west, and some of those smaller rooms just touching the large area, those are storage rooms for various organizations. Necessity for Neighbors has storage designated there, as well as others. There's kind of a beverage station on the upper right-hand side. And yes, now I will talk about the quilting room. The quilting room, yes, you could get to it from the music side of things, but it was really envisioned to be part of this ring of classrooms and usable rooms that go along with the 2-story addition. And the second floor would be, of course, you don't, this is just, the second floor doesn't extend through any other part of the building but this west end. But you can see lots and lots of extra classrooms. There's those 12 to 16 classrooms we talked about. Up on the top, there are bathrooms. To the right of the bathrooms in that kind of open area, that's a beverage station again that you can, if you have meetings up there, you can have a place to make coffee, things like that. Down at the bottom is the youth room, goes from downstairs to upstairs, and of course on both ends, on the lower left and upper right, are stairwells to get up to that area, as well as that dark red rectangle is an elevator to get you up to that floor as well. So I'm going to take you down now, down that staircase at the bottom of the page, and let you see what that entrance into the building from the west looks like with that staircase coming down, which is kind of cool. So you're standing with your back to the hall to the sanctuary. You're looking out the doors to the west parking lot, and there's the stairs to get up to the second floor. So that's kind of fun with all that going on. I'm thinking, speaking of doors, there's a door leading somewhere at the very bottom of that staircase, and that's the next area that we're going to talk about next, the area behind that door. But before I go there, I'm going to take a look at that area again from the outside of the building. There is that area there. You now know that this is the Christian Education Center. You know it's the west entrance with all the glass. And that area to the right of it is a gym or multi-use space area. And here's what it would look like, kind of sketched out on the inside, is that big place on the lower left. The blue lines on it mark a middle school sized basketball court. The black lines on it mark 4 pickleball courts. We learned something from visiting other churches, that the churches that had gyms attached said that their adult population used the gym as much as the youth population. It's like the adults schedule their pickleball times during the day, and then the after school and evening, the youth take over. And interesting enough, something I hadn't considered about a gym is that when you open it up to be available for the community, like to have Y-ball practices and Y-ball games, it's an income generating space. I think they get like $150 an hour for organizations that are renting out their gym. The long storage to the right side of that would be for tables and chairs, for whenever we have to set up those big funerals and events someplace that they could be. Then I just want to go to the right of the gym Most of those rooms don't change greatly. Those are currently library on top, peace care room down below. But the rooms at the bottom end of that, they get reconfigured because they've found a way to move the daycare nursery down into the pod of these other classrooms. So it's tucked away down there where it needs to be. And then if we pan over just to the right a little bit more, you see a group of pink, orange, whatever that color is supposed to be there on this. This is now the office suite. And they have added, they added 4 offices, but they changed the whole configuration. There's some new construction for these offices, these 6 offices on the right side. And by moving those over there, they were able to create a racetrack, a hallway that connects all the offices together. So we're all in one place. This big room on the left it says conference room on there, big enough to hold our church council meetings in, or any group of 15 or so. And the second largest room there is a staff collaboration area where we can meet as we are making plans together. So those are some rooms that I'm looking forward to getting to use quite a bit whenever that part happens. Okay, those are all the spaces in the church. I'm going to show you a little bit about what it all looks like from the outside when you put it together. First of all, I'm going to show you what it looks like along the south end of the building. Nope, it went too far. Okay, let me see. I gotta see if I'm following my tracks. Okay, I must not have put that slide in there, but maybe there's some other slides that will pick it up. Instead, let me go right to that slide that I did show you that was looking from the top down. The architects put this together. I don't know if you can make out. It's our parking lot along the perimeter. It's our existing building in gray, and the new additions that would be outlined in blue. So the existing building is about 45,000 square feet currently. If we remove the fellowship hall, that takes out about 6,000 feet. But we are adding in the areas that you see, I believe I got this right, another, I'm not going to get this right, another 45,000 square feet. 29,000 feet on the ground level, and then that second story has another 16,000 feet. So we just about double the size. And all that stuff that's in the gray, at least 30,000 square feet of that existing 45 or 39 now needs to be remodeled in some way or fashion. So everything gets tweaked a little bit. We do take up some parking as we come off on the west side. There's a playground that comes off the south side of the building now, because we had to move the playground off the north side next to 41st Street, and that took some parking. And you can notice that we reconfigured how you use the drop-off canopy on the east side of the church, and removed that parking that jutted off towards 41st Street to the north. So that all gets turned back into lawn and some green space to kind of set that up a little nicer from the street. But all in all, it was important for us to at least have 250 spaces, which would give a ratio of 2 to 1 for people using the building. And in this site plan, I believe I counted up 266 spaces there. So we stayed within our limit that way. Then these are just some fun drawings that the architects did of what it would look like driving by our church on 41st Street. First, coming from the east, going west, the architect had fun giving us a new sign as well, very imposing brick sign. But you can see in the background, there is our sanctuary and that new vestibule and canopy that come out that end of the building. So, yeah, that'll get your attention. And if you're coming from the west, heading east, this is what you, oh no, wrong. This is actually right straight north of 41st Street. I wanted to throw this one in here because it gives you an indication of how the length of our building, with the sanctuary on the left side, the music ministry right there in the middle, and then the Christian education building on the right with the gym further back, as you can see there too. Entrance and gym. Okay, and now coming from the west, that would be the kind of how it would look as well. That big, nice cross feature on the corner of the Christian Ed part of the building, then the west entrance and the gym beyond that. And just because it's fun, they did one of these at night. Have it all lit up. So basically, it's a striking building, whatever direction that you're coming from. So you can start to see a little bit now why the design team got pretty jazzed at being able to see how fine of a job the TSP did in putting all of our wants, all of our needs into some physical format that seemed to flow very well from one end of the building to the other. If you're wondering what it's all going to cost and whether or not we can afford it, I think the best way I can answer that is to say, yes, we can afford it, but we're going to have to do a little bit at a time. It is, the cost of the total master plan exceeds what Peace Lutheran currently would be able to raise in a 3-year period. So it doesn't mean it's a bad plan. It's a wonderful plan, but it's going to require a little more discernment to figure out how we can break that down into phases. And to figure that out then is why we have pulled together a fantastic feasibility team to figure out the best way, the most logical way to make this happen over a period of phases. Sometime in the months ahead, they are hopefully will be in a place where they can present what they would propose for being in the first phase. And it probably is a first phase, second phase, third phase kind of proposal. They've had some wonderful conversations. It's a difficult thing because they have trying to weigh what ministry needs are most pressing versus there's kind of a logical order of how spaces need to be managed. You can't build a space that takes away something you currently need unless you find a way to replace that in some other place. And so it's a little bit like working on a puzzle, but they've had some wonderful conversations so far. I think they're asking all the right questions. They're continuing to working with the architects at TSP, who are very gracious with their time and helping us think through collectively what would be the most logical to put into a phase one. And they in turn are working with a contractor group who are hoping to estimate costs so that we can come up with a phase one that is totally doable and something we can get excited about. So I want to share with you again that quote from St. Francis. He said, by ourselves, I think I had this in a quote, by ourselves, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. So I want to say it again, that sharing with you these drawings, the intention is not to suggest that the dream has already been set in stone. Far from it. It's rather, sharing this with you tonight is to invite you to be part of the dreaming process so that we can dream together. Because new spaces allow for new kinds of ministries. New spaces enhance the ministries that we're already engaged in. And so we are smack dab in the middle of this time of dreaming. that there are lots of discussions still to have and to share down the road as we collectively discern which of those dreams we're going to build into reality. Okay, that's from start to finish. But I bet you have generated some questions that you are thinking of asking, and I don't know if Pat is quickly available with a microphone. I hear her. Just in case folks have a question, I would love for you to use the microphone because people who are watching online will not be able to hear you unless you speak into the mic. That's just part of this on live stream ministry. You have to have a mic. So does anybody have a question out of all the things you've seen? And this group probably would remember Merv Griffin. So you can be Merv Griffin with the mic and pass that around. It's on. I can hear it.
Where is there a room big enough for like the senior Bible study on Friday mornings, which is like 65 to 80 people?
Right. The concept is that in that big Christian education ministry area, when I said there were those that large space that could be divided into 4 rectangles, I'm saying just one of those rectangles could easily handle 80, but if you guys grew to 160, you could just cut the room in half, not fourths, and you'd have double the capacity. If you ever needed the whole room, that would be possible too, and that would probably be, you could probably get 250, 300 people in there.
And when we have our potlucks again, we can all get in the same room. No one has to sit out in the narthex, so that's exciting.
Yeah. Arlene.
Just wanting to know, is the kitchen then close to both? It goes double duty? Is that what we're saying, kind of?
It does, and there is, of course, it has a serving window. Let's see if I can get back to that slide, Arlene. It has a serving window right off to the right, and to do what was going to primarily be the food and fellowship room, that gathering space. But if you had a large food event going on in that Christian education space, that big, you could exit out the west end of that. You have to cross the hallway, but there are huge, that wall, it's marked by little W's there. Those depict walls that slide open. It can be very open, so that as you're getting supplies from the kitchen to that area, you can do that. It's kind of, that green area is kind of was seen as to be a less used space for food and beverages than the space to the right in blue. That would be your primarily food space. Am I saying that right, Tim?
May I ask another question?
Yes, and it doesn't even cost you anything more.
Having grandchildren in the children's programs here at Peace, now we have 2 playgrounds. Now, did I just see 1 playground, or will there be 2 to the south, or?
You saw 1 playground,
Okay.
but it is, I will say, it's very fair to say it is not designed.
Oh.
So it's just kind of showing where a playground space would need to be and whether or not that got divided into a preschool area versus a grade school area. That is yet to be designed.
Okay.
The kitchen is yet to be designed. There's some kitchen experts sitting in this room that need to be part of the kitchen design when it comes time to build the kitchen.
We have a couple of questions from online.
Questions
The
from
first
online.
had to do with the kitchen and the type of stoves that might be there, if they were residential or commercial.
Those of you familiar with the kitchen know that we have 2, I would say, residential grade range stoves. We have a commercial grade convection oven, double convection oven, which I imagine commercial grade stuff is going to get moved over very easily. I think it's up to the kitchen design team whether or not they need residential style stove range ovens, or if they need what they need in there. I mean, knowing that it's money, but I'm not going to make that decision. We are going to let a kitchen design team and kind of give them a budget allowance, I would guess, for how to equip that.
And then the second question from online is there an addition to the sanctuary, such as a balcony?
That I can answer very easily. There is no addition plan to the sanctuary. This was the run room that seems to be functioning perfectly. We are, our worship attendants, especially maybe now that we're doing online all the time too, this room, if everybody is in a pew and along the back, and kind of cheek to cheek, holds about 500 people. This room feels full when we hit about 400. It's that 80% rule. And we keep track of how many services per year we hit the 400 plus mark. And except for Christmas and Easter, that doesn't happen here in this room with our current worship schedule. We have 4 services on Sunday, 1 on previous Saturday night and 1 on the following Wednesday night. And between those 6 services, we have effectively kept any one service from going over that 400 limit with any consistency. So yeah, in some regards, worshiping patterns have changed for our congregation, as well as for a lot of society, that people who are never miss a Sunday sometimes miss a Sunday now. And people who were maybe hitting twice a week or hitting more like once every 3 weeks or something, not twice a week, but once. It just changed. We are typically gathering for worship fewer times, and so the numbers in worship, even though our congregation is increasing in numbers, worship numbers have stayed roughly the same and quite manageable given this space here. Do not foresee any changes in 15 years in needing to expand the worship space. 2 more questions, Jackie, and then Jim.
Okay. First of all, this is fantastic. It's just an amazing plan. I'm just curious, when you have to do it bit by bit, where do you start? What is the first thing that gets addressed? Is it the gathering, or?
Well, that's a good question. So actually, I'm going to take a little straw poll vote right now. I mean, if you guys were on these teams, which of those spaces that I showed you tonight would you put of highest priority, things that we should find a way to do in the first phase? Would it be to expand the gathering space, to add more music rehearsal space, add more Christian education space, add the gym, reconfigure the daycare, add offices? Any of those you want to vote for? Jim, you have a vote? No, he's not voting. He wants to ask his question.
At one time, there was some dreams about having a second sanctuary,
Yes.
like for the contemporary group, and maybe having 5 or 6 services on a Sunday morning.
There was a dream, and that was kind of the dream that we had going right up to 2008, 2009, and because we noticed increasing worship attendance, that if we straight lined it out, we said, we're going to need a second worship space. And then it's like we watch society change. And as I mentioned, Jim, the numbers, the growth in worship stopped. We at Peace were quite remarkable amongst ELCA Lutheran churches in that we maintained our worship average. About every other Lutheran church in the country has shown a decrease in worship attendance in the last 10 years. So yeah, we changed, we let go of that idea. That idea is part of why we went so big with the parking lot. We thought, holy smokes, if we're going to have 2 worship services at the same time, we better have enough parking for 2 worship services at the same time. But it doesn't look like at this time that that's the right idea, because we just don't have those worship numbers. Turns out, though, those extra parking spaces are going to come in real handy, because we're going to be building on some of those spaces. It's like the Holy Spirit maybe even knew what the Holy Spirit was doing. I don't know if you wouldn't know the story. I just got to tell the story of the parking lot. We added to the parking lot in 2011. We all know we wanted to buy the three houses right on the other side of Cambridge, that street. And we already had a former member who was moving, sell us the one on the south end. And we had 2 members in the remaining ones that we negotiated with a little bit, very gently with. Didn't want to push them out, but kind of wanted to encourage them that any time in the next few years would be a great time for the church if they wanted to sell. And they both ended up selling, but at that same time, Pastor Obed, who was serving here at the time, said, notice that the house, next one back off of 41st Street, notice that it was a renter moving in and moving out. And they were moving out, and he contacted the landlord and asked, hey, what'd you think about selling that to Peace? And the landlord was in a place he wanted to unload it. So boom, and then I knew who lived in the other house, and I went and contacted her and said, just want you to know, and anytime want to be your first thing, and in less than a week, she said, I'm ready to sell. And all of a sudden, we went from 3 lots to 5 lots, and that's what gave us the land for the parking lot. It was unexpected. Okay, Wayne, you had a question. Okay, I'm going to let him ask the question out loud, and then we're going to let Tim answer it. Because I want to give Tim a chance to speak, and this sounds like a great architect question. So go ahead, Wayne.
When they start building piece by piece, and they build a piece on, is the next piece going to be so that they don't have to tear a lot of the new construction off? Because that's a lot of extra cost if they do stuff like that. So I think you guys will.
He's just nodding. He says, of course, yes, that's what we'll do. And that's part of what makes the puzzle so difficult, is that we don't want to be tearing things up that we just put together. Tim, you can probably put a little more finesse on that.
Well, I think that's a great question, and we certainly looked at all of those things as we were looking at the different pieces as they might come together. And certainly as you think about the phases, that's one of the trickiest pieces, right, is that you need to make sure that you're not undoing or throwing away work that you've invested money in. And so that is part of that conversation that's happening right now, is what can you build now that makes sense now to build, so that you don't, number one, don't have to pull things and throw it away later, that it's useful, but that it's also not unuseful for the first phase, that you're the best stewards of the money there. So it is a balance, but that certainly is, as we've looked at things, the phases kind of determined by the priorities that have at least been identified thus far, is trying to make sure we minimize any of that rework. Yeah.
Well said. See, I knew he could do that very well. Glad we have Tim working with us. Any other questions? Okay, Al just asked me what's the total cost is, and the total estimated cost, that's all I can really give you, Al, for the master plan as presented. It was given to us, construction only, not all the additional costs that go on to that, but 11 million, okay? So we're trying to at least half that number, if not something a little bit smaller than that. There's some strategy in keeping the first phase small, because that way you can get it paid off quicker and move on to the second phase. But you want to get enough of what you need for when you need it as well. So it's a very interesting balancing act to go through this. Lauren had a question. Thanks for waiting, Lauren, till Pat gets there. By the way, as she gets there, I'm not privy to all the different. I know 10 years ago, when our Saviors added on to their church, you know, $11 million, I believe, was the cost of that construction project, which was more expensive than what $11 million is today. But I think that's about what that addition cost them, and they did it all in one fell swoop. Gloria Day, that purchased land and built that unit that they have over there on West 41st Street, 57th, West 57th Street. I think that got closer to 17 million, 14? Is that 7? See, now I'm just guessing. Those numbers get so big that I can't quite remember what it was. I'll say 14, I'll go low. Okay, Lauren.
Yeah, 10 years ago when they were talking about the new plans and everything, it seemed to me that it was less about adding worship space because of the space problem than having a second space so that two services could go on at the same time and free up time between services. So, you know, it wouldn't get congested in the gathering area and there would be more fellowship time. And so I guess I was wondering, is that a possibility that at some time there would be another worship space just for time factors?
See, that's a nice idea. And you're right, that was part of the discussion 10 years ago, that one of the advantages of having concurrent worship in the building was that on this side of the building, if you weren't trying to squeeze 4 services into a Sunday morning, if you're only doing 3, all of a sudden you can pad more space in between services. And you'd have that time where you could sit and visit and relax. So that if, and suggesting that maybe in this new construction that we could still consider doing a contemporary service in some other part of the building and free up the worship schedule on Sunday morning. I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility if that's something the congregation would like to do. We just have to kind of keep talking about that idea and seeing if some people, I do know that we did a contemporary Christmas Eve service, which was not well attended, but the folks that ended up down in the fellowship hall really enjoyed that different atmosphere for a worship setting. So there might be some merit to that there still, Lauren.
Another question from online, is there a time frame to start?
No. I mean, that's the easiest answer. Can't say we're going to start till we know what we're going to build. But roughly speaking, once we have an idea of what phase 1 is going to be, then there will be a time that's presented to the congregation, and we're going to give ourselves some time to live in it, think about it, look at it, time to get excited about it, be able to see how 1, that it's doable, and 2, that it's going to meet the most immediate needs. And I guess after that time of discernment, then what would happen, there'd be a congregational meeting where we would say, okay, we want to go ahead with this project. We want to commence some kind of a capital drive to start raising funds for this project. And typically there might be a minimum number saying we need to have this much money pledged before we can pull the trigger and start hiring contractors and going with it. So that's kind of the steps that need to happen before we start getting the shovels out and digging up ground. And it's a bit of a fluid timeline. It really depends on how quickly we can come with what's going to be the perfect phase 1, something that we all can get behind and say, yeah, we're ready to do this. So we're not voting at this next week at the annual meeting. Not going to happen. Okay, Jim. Thanks again for waiting, Jim. Do you have your Fitbit on, Pat? Getting more steps in tonight?
A few years ago, we decreased the size of the coat room over here and created a real traffic jam between services with people coming and going. Is there anything in this new edition about possibly enlarging it again somewhat?
You are the first person that I know of that has said anything about the coat room, Jim. Well, yeah, we have things stored in there too, and I'm sure that decreases some of its effectiveness as a coat room. If we took the stuff stored in there out of there, Jim, do you think we would have enough space as a coat room? It's the people, not the stuff. Is anybody? You guys you're just not complainers. I have not heard of coat room traffic jams yet. This is a new concept. Well, our architect is here listening to this, Jim. You know that your words have not fallen on deaf ears, that somebody else is here. I would guess in that master plan build out that as we are moving walls back from the Shalom room that they have got, I don't remember seeing it on the floor plan, but I'm sure that room has to be addressed as well. Now, oh, look at you. Jonathan, you were just amazing. So it is drawn there, and I can't tell if it's smaller or bigger than it used to be. It does open up, so it loses the tight way into it goes away, and it has it looks like 2 banks of coats instead of 3 banks, but it does open it up so people won't be the problem. You can get into it from the east or from the north. Both those walls are gone. What do you think, Jim? Possibility. Okay. And thank you for being quick on the draw, Jonathan. Other questions? Okay. I know we hit the 1 hour mark. And I said none of this is conclusive. This is to wet our collective whistle to think, hey, somebody's been thinking about this. Somebody's been thinking about what comes next in terms of enhancing the space we do ministry in. And I couldn't hold it back any longer. There was just this master plan was full of such wonderful ideas that I wanted to be able to share them with you, to get you thinking about them as well, so that when the phase 1 recommendation comes out, you'll be able to say, oh yeah, I'm glad they put that in there. I can see how that's going to work. With that, let's close our time together with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we do thank you for your faithfulness to us always. The faithfulness of having family and friends surround us and walk the journey with us. But your faithfulness in how you've called us here to this ministry, to this faith family here at Peace. Thank you for the gift of the folks we share this family with, and for your faithfulness to our ministry here, ministry to which you've called us to do. Help us to continue to listen to you as you guide us into the future. Paths not yet trodden, but asking for you the courage to step forward, knowing that you have a hold of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Again, thank you for coming tonight, for being those faces in the crew, and for those online, thank you for joining us as well.
February. Whoa. Matt Gassman from Feeding South Dakota is going to be our guest speaker. So it'll be the last Monday in February. So mark your calendars. We'll do the same thing. We'll have it here in the sanctuary with masks or online. So put that on your calendar and we'll see you then. And thanks again for coming.